Now, we know you have choices when you fly, and Microsoft would like to thank you for choosing Microsoft DevOps. There are a lot of DevOps options.
There are. Generally, they're not one big solution. There are lots of different point solutions that do individual parts pretty well, but trying to bring everything together can be complicated.
Yeah, maybe there aren't as many options as we think. Nonetheless, Azure DevOps is a serious product with a lot of pieces that are unbelievable. Wouldn't it be cool if we could talk to the Director of Product Management, Program Management, right here on this show. We've got him. It's this episode of Dev Radio. Hey, and welcome to the next episode of Dev Radio. I'm Jerry. I'm here with Darren. Hi, Darren.
Hey, Jerry.
Darren, have you ever considered an actual automated build process?
I have built manually using lots of different systems, but recently moving into VSTS.
Yeah.
And using the CI systems there. But
Visual Studio Team Suite. Is that what you mean?
That's the one.
No, Team System.
Team Services.
We love that. My gosh. Well, let me ask you a little bit more about that.
Sure.
So now you have an automated process, and you want to somehow make it so that you can pass it to the next developer, and so he needs to learn Chef or whatever, all these different things.
These different technologies. It's such a broad ecosystem of point solutions.
Yeah.
It would be great to bring it all together.
It really would be. So you download Microsoft DevOps. You install that.
Yes.
It's a wizard that pops up next.
Yeah, you need a little small USB just to install that.
It's brilliant. Actually, it'd be awfully awesome. It would be just great if we could talk to maybe Azure DevOps, the actual set of tools that we have up in the cloud, ready to go, and if we had the Director of Program Management right here, Mr. Cool himself, Jamie Cool. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, guys. Glad to be here.
Now, Jamie, it's possible somebody doesn't know who you are. Introduce who Jamie is so that people can get kind of a scope of who we're talking to here.
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm like you said, the Director of PM. So that pretty much means that I run the program management team for the Azure DevOps suite of products, boards, artifacts, pipelines, repos, the full set.
And full set. You're like the Scrum Master of the Scrum of Scrums.
Yes, there you go. Like if you want to put it in Scrum terminology, you have it correct, right? And the program management team, the program managers are kind of the Scrum Masters is one way to look at it. The customer advocate's another way to look at it. The customer evangelist, those sets of things. But we help figure out what we should be building and make sure those engineers are actually doing the right things as part of it. So that's what I'm responsible for. I'm here in North Carolina. Interesting, we actually are a very distributed team. We build out of Redmond, San Francisco, Hyderabad, and Raleigh, North Carolina, as well a bunch of folks distributed all across the world. So a very distributed team. And I've been
back in the day when it was just TFS, I think Raleigh, North Carolina is where that was the headquarters or the main development area, right?
Yeah, so basically how this started is SourceSafe. So 25 plus years ago, Brian Harry started a company and built SourceSafe and built SourceSafe, and then Microsoft bought it. Brian moved to Redmond, and there he worked and did a bunch of really good projects. So the CLR, back at the CLR 1.0 in the .NET Framework days, that was Brian.
Wow.
So it turned out when he was ready to move back home, we didn't want to lose him, so we basically started up a site for Brian, and that was the origin. And the project that Brian started was TFS. So that's where the North Carolina site started from. And then I worked out in Redmond for 10 years, including on the .NET Framework, back in the day. So I had worked closely with Brian. So just like Brian, I was moving back to the East Coast, for family reasons. And I remembered, hey, didn't Brian start up a site here? And I called Brian up, and that's how I ended up here in North Carolina for the last 10 years.
Wow. And now was that the first product not built in Redmond?
I can't say for absolute certain that was the first product not built in Redmond, but it's certainly got to be
rumor.
Because that was back in the mid '90s.
Yeah.
Oh, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Absolutely, that was the first one.
So let's start with Visual Studio Team Services. That's what we were originally talking about earlier. And so this was the DevOps story for quite a long time for Microsoft, before Azure DevOps ever came along. And now, is it just a name change, or do we see something tangibly different?
Yeah, and just for the record, I think, about half of those other examples you guys were playing around with were right at one point in time as well. So
that's the craziness of it, isn't it?
It has been a bit of a journey here as part of it. So one thing is different. The name is different. That's definitely true, and we do like our name changes. Here at Microsoft, yeah. No doubt about that. There is something else structurally different, though. The other thing that's structurally different is that Visual Studio Team Services and TFS, like those, traditionally have always been one product. And in fact, that's really their main value prop, over the years, right? Has been here's like the one thing that you get, and it's just kind of like a development system out of the box for you. It all works together. It already has all the traceability integration pieces. And, now with this, change, it's not just a single product, but it's a suite of products, right? So Azure DevOps are the suite of products. But then we have Azure Pipelines, artifacts, repos, boards, and test plans that each are targeted at a specific, domain space. And if you just need a solution for CI/CD, you can just use pipelines. If you just need a project management and a planning tool, you can just use boards. If you just need a test plan, you can do it with each of those. And the goal of that is to help meet folks where they're at, because I talk to customers all the time, and some of them really want the full suite, but a lot of folks really just have a specific problem, and they want to solve that problem to start out with. And now we give you a more flexible way to do that. Now, if you want to keep using the full set, you can keep using the full set, and it works just fine together. So current customers, they don't lose anything as part of this.
So that's one of the cool things about moving a property such as this into a truly cloud architecture, where you can have these services with these connectors that allow you to connect all of these things together into a kind of an a la carte solution. I think you mentioned the sort of repository aspect of it. Obviously, there's been a lot of evolution around the whole repository side of Microsoft's source control solution. You mentioned SourceSafe earlier on. TFS being a kind of reserved checkout model with the ability to somehow work offline and so on. And it's all kind of gone full circle to this point, where we've now really embraced a truly offline distributed source code solution.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, this was one of the projects that I was involved in pretty closely, 7-8 years ago. In fact, it seems pretty crazy, but again, there's been this general journey that I've been here at Microsoft for 20 years. It's interesting to see kind of the different journeys that we've been on. And the last 7-8 years, we've been on this journey that, we kind of talk about as this called a new Microsoft one, where, hey, 10 years ago, the notion that eventually we would have the Windows team putting their source code in a version control system that Linus built would have been like, head exploding. And today it's just like, yeah, well, of course we're going to do that. Why would we do anything else? But 7-8 years ago, when it was really clear the DVCS wave was catching on, and that was a real need, we had this, set of choices we were going through, and there were big ones, like which were, do we embrace Git as kind of like this new source control system that we can, start making available in the product? Do we embrace Mercurial? Because at the time, Mercurial worked way better with Windows than Git did. Or do we try to, make existing Team Foundation version control more DVCS-like, right? And, it was a hard decision back then. It seems obvious now, and thankfully we made, what in retrospect is the right decision, but we just embraced Git. And, I think that was a good decision in terms of what customers wanted. And, it meant we went and did things like, Git wasn't very good on Windows, and we've spent a bunch of energy making Git good on Windows and trying to, help make that open source project just be better itself. And, now it's culminating with, to the point where the notion that GitHub joining Microsoft is just something that makes sense on a bunch of different levels, and something that I'm real excited about.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the key things there is you mentioned how Microsoft actually embraced it. and not only consumed it, but also gave back. I mean, the other thing that springs to mind is the large file support that got placed into the Git capability because of the needs of the Windows development team.
Yeah, and a couple episodes ago of Dev Radio even, we had the file system team who built the virtual Git file system. Yeah, the VGFS.
VFS.
And all the things did I get it right?
VFS, forget it. Used to be GVFS, right? And then, we got some feedback from the open source community. That acronym was already taken by the file system. So then we've rebranded it. And when we rebranded it, we thought we could bring some extra Microsoft, naming sauce to it just to make it extra complicated.
So it's Service Pack 2?
I tell you what, all these naming changes in my mind are because of Big Sticker. A lot of things are because of Big Oil, but this is like the sticker companies want us to print more stickers. And so they're constantly wanting us to change the name. That's what I think. I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's not like
it could be.
Like it.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Yeah. Wait, I feel like we're not getting to where we want to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're now, if you look at the umbrella of products that Microsoft has that help the entire DevOps solution, one of them is DevOps Pipelines, or Azure Pipelines, sorry, or just Pipelines. It's just Pipelines.
Just call it pipelines. Keep it simple.
Azure DevOps Pipelines. Is that the full?
Just call it pipelines. Keep all of our lives simple right now.
Okay, got it. We'll see where the next sticker is. And but this has been around a little while. Talk to us let's step back before we called it pipelines, when it was just this thing. What was the problem we were solving, and kind of what happened? What's happened now? Like, what do we give developers when it comes to pipelines?
Yeah, so I think there's been a couple of things. One is that if I look at the journey that I've seen development teams over since I've been in this space, like if I go back 10 years ago, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, but it's true. About half of my customers weren't using version control
At all.
Yeah, no. Like, where do you store your source code? Like,
Dropbox.
On my desk, right? No. Right. This was pre-Dropbox, and this is like file share, like enterprise file share type of thing.
Got it. So once a month, they would zip it up, basically.
Right. Different forms of that. Some of them had scripts that would copy it to like multiple file shares, so that you were safe every day, kind of thing. But now everybody uses source control. And we've kind of matured to the point where most folks are doing CI, but not to the point where everybody does CI the same way. A lot of people will do CI on a nightly build, right? So like if something broke that day, you'll find out, in the evening. But you really want to be doing CI on before anything gets into master, right? Like on every pull request and any change. And not only that, but you want that CI build not just to be validating the build, but you want it to be validating some reasonable set of tests, right? And you want that to be fast. The people are in kind of different levels of that journey. But then the next step beyond that is you don't want to be just able to validate, the changes. You want to be able to deploy it and validate the actual deployment of all of this, right? So you start getting into the CD, the continuous delivery, continuous deployment side of things. And this is where I think, a lot of folks that I talk to are at in kind of the maturity spectrum, trying to get to the point of having that automated, right? And getting to the point where the process of deploying their application both to their test environments and to their production environments is kind of this seamless, logical, automated progression. So, if you look over the years where we've put more and more energy, it's been in the CI/CD space, because this is where folks are at in terms of like what their needs and where they're trying to grow up. So, we've had, we've called it build in the past, build capabilities in TFS and VSTS over the years. And, now what we've basically done is separated that out into a dedicated CI/CD product, so that if you just need to solve your CI/CD problems, regardless of whether you're using Azure repos or GitHub or Bitbucket or whatever version control system that you want to go and use, you can do that. And whether you're using our artifact system or Artifactory, like you can compose this with whatever pieces you want in a way that you could do before, but now it's a more natural way to go do it. And then in addition to that, we're just continuing to grow up the richness and capabilities of what you can do not only on the CI side, but on the CD side. I could show you a couple of examples of this.
I'd love it. Okay, Jamie, I can see your screen. What am I looking at here?
Yeah, so what I'm showing you is the instance of Azure DevOps that we actually use ourselves. In fact, over here are all of the different organizations inside of Microsoft. So like here's the DevDiv organization where they build Visual Studio. Here's the Dynamics organization where they build Dynamics. And if I were to go through the list, you'd find all of like it's basically our internal usage of it, because we use Azure DevOps to build Azure DevOps, and we use Azure DevOps to build most of the products that we use here at Microsoft.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go into this project right here, which is the Azure DevOps project. And it's always fun, demoing things, live. So this is our live project, and you can see that I've got, like just in the last 7 days, and the last 7 days included Thanksgiving, so this is a little bit light. There were 1,500 pull requests into it, and 80% of our builds succeeded. So this is a pretty big project. Where a lot of folks, work on it. So we scale to teams of one and teams the size of Windows and Office, which are many thousands of engineers. But what I wanted to show you is pipeline, because here you can see we use boards, repos, pipeline, test plans, artifacts, even some internal extensions that we've built as well. And some of these innovations that we build internally, we often incubate, then we bring into the product and ship externally. But what I wanted to show you was inside of pipelines. And if I go in here, if I go to our releases tab, the releases tab, we have just a whole ton of builds and releases that we do in different forms, because Azure DevOps is composed of many different microservices that make it up. Each of them kind of deploy in different ways at different times. It gives you more flexibility. One of the things that's been interesting from us is this has been an evolution for us, and I see this with our customers as well. Where we started as an on-premise product, right, which meant really we were a single server install, which meant like we were not a set of microservices. We were one mega service. In fact, we referred to it as the monolith. You can see it's still named TFS. And then over time, we go and we separate out capabilities of the monolith into separate microservices, and that gives us a lot of agility. So we just finished, as an example, separating out our test result storage from TFS into a separate microservice, and we have a steady stream of those. And now it's about 30, 40 different microservices, as well as the TFS monolith that make this up. But one of the things that we've gotten to is we ship now dozens of times a day, really as many times as we need to. We ship big cadence every 3 weeks, which is what our big set of features every 3 weeks, which is what our sprint cadence is. If I go back in time, really not that far long ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, our typical ship cycle would be years, right? 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 3 years.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And now, like here, I can just go and look and see, hey, I'm just looking at this particular release, and this is the one that's currently active right now, and I'm just going to drill into it, and I can go down. I can go down and see that this has been deployed to different rings as part of this. And this isn't like my best example. Actually, let me go grab a different one. How about this one? Here's one where essentially what we're doing is this release is being rolled out to these different rings. And, we have a very large service. We have millions of users that use it, and we run it in different regions all across the world. So we have, multiple data centers in the US, in Western Europe, Australia, India, all across. And when you do this, one of the nice things about shipping often is you get to ship often. But the danger of doing that is like you're going to make mistakes. Like you just are. Like you're not going to catch every single problem. So one of the major ways that you mitigate this is you roll it out incrementally. So you roll it out to just like one ring at a time. See if there was a problem. If there wasn't, then you proceed on as part of that. And this is what we do. So ring 0, for example, is exactly the instance I'm looking at now. So we roll it out to ourselves first, and if we see changes then that are a problem, then it doesn't proceed to the rest. But even if it's not, even if it's working well, then it proceeds to the next ring, and we validate that. And different size changes, roll at a different rate. So like if it's a minor UI bug fix, we may roll it out over the course of an hour to all the rings. If it's our major, every 3 week sprints, like each ring, it may spend, half a day in it, just kind of baking and validating. But each of these things, you can see this particular change is one that's, taking a little bit of time. It's rolled out to our first 4 rings, and now it's in the process of rolling out to, ring 5 as part of this, and that's our final ring, and it's pending intervention. So not only can you automate, because if you were to drill into the logs of each of these, you would see exactly what this is doing on each of these operations. And these are just the logs of the operation that was run to go and do the automated command. But it lets you control the flow that all of this goes through and control the gates. So in order to roll out from this, there's a validation check that happens that either, depending on the release, is a manual one that the person comes in and, the set of people that are managing the release, like, approve it to roll out to the next ring, or you set up a set of gates that basically look at telemetry to see, like in this case, ring 4 is operating well for a sustained period of time. If those conditions are met, then let it automatically roll out to ring 5 as part of that. So this is kind of when you ask the question, like, where is this going? What are the next set of things? These types of problems, trying to solve not just the CI problem, but the CD problems, are, kind of one of the places where these are going. Since I have this here, just another thing worth showing. One of the other problems that, we're solving on the CI side of things, and this is a particularly exciting for me, as a longtime Microsoft, person, is we're really embracing open source. So we were basically making it so that Azure Pipelines works great for all open source projects, and we give you an incredibly large free offer. So if you need CI as an open source project, pretty much anybody can get it. So like I just picked one here, Parcel, which is a GitHub project which has 28,000 stars. And if I come down here, I can see there's a badge for Azure Pipelines, and it looks like their last build has failed. And if we just follow the badge to this, I can come in and I can see their build, and I can see why did this fail? Because the Windows 8X version of their build and test failed for some reason. And this is the cool thing about this from my perspective is we have hosted pools that we give you of Mac, Linux, and Windows builds of Windows machines. So this is what this person has did. They basically have set up a build that's going to run these 10 jobs all in parallel at the same time, because it's all about speed when you're talking about build test validation, and let them all run on our hardware. They didn't have to manage setting all this stuff up. And I'm just kind of curious, it's their test that actually failed. So I'm actually curious to see. Well, I'll go explore this together. We can come in and we can see what exactly their tests. We can come in and try to find, which tests actually failed. So I think in this case, they just had some that didn't run and didn't report back up. But, that's the type of thing and the type of problem that we're trying to solve, to make these types of things. Like you used to walk around the halls in Microsoft, and, you'd have these big, you have offices everywhere, obviously, but you'd have these big, like, just rooms, like half the size of buildings full of machines that we just use for build and test labs. And we'd have to have people to go manage those machines. You don't have to do that anymore. Like now, like we're solving those problems for you, and like we're shutting those labs down all across the company because folks can just come and use, Azure essentially, and we take care of these problems for you.
So you have everything in Azure, and including all these Macs as well.
All these Macs, that's right. We run a big pool of Macs.
What's the service that tests across different types of devices? What was that? It was a Visual Studio Device Center.
Yeah. So that was part of Xamarin, right? So now that's part of App Center.
And now that's part of App Center.
That's
Got
right.
it. And I can include this in the pipeline.
That's exactly right. So App Center is basically a product that is about, if you're building a mobile app, kind of an all-in-one, what you need to do, mobile development, from a service standpoint.
Yeah.
And as part of that, they have a CI capability built in. Now, that CI capability is actually powered by Azure Pipelines. So everything that you do there is part of Azure Pipelines. We actually work really closely with that team, and that's part of why we have such a rich set of mobile build capabilities built into Azure Pipelines.
Yeah. Yeah, I may have actually used the wrong word. I think maybe Hockey App was rebranded to App Center.
Yeah, so Hockey App is, in fact, they just announced this last week or the week before. So Hockey App, all of the users are being migrated now to App Center as part of this transition.
Yeah, I got that email on my apps too. Yeah. Nice. And so, what are developers saying? Like, have you hit the nail on the head here, or what's missing?
Yeah, so I think what's missing. I'm a program manager here. I'm not supposed to tell you about what's wrong with
Oh, sorry. Yeah, what's your favorite feature? That's what I
I
meant.
don't know. Like, okay, it's good. So, it's actually one of the things that's that I have enjoyed a lot, right, is that with the embrace of open source, here's like one of the cool things, right, is now I can come in to GitHub and you can just search for Azure Pipelines. And what you end up getting are, a bunch of, issues and pull requests and changes where folks are just talking about Azure Pipelines in some form or another. And it's this whole new feedback channel from users that very open and transparent. So like that's very exciting to me as a program manager. So it's been exciting to that, and it's interesting watching the feedback. And I think one of the things I'm very happy with is it feels like there is definitely a real gap that exists today for CI/CD SaaSes, because there aren't actually a lot of CI/CD SaaSes, right? Like if you think about like what most people use, Jenkins, TeamCity, those types of systems, like traditional ones, like they're not SaaSes, right? Like those are go run it yourself type of systems, right? And they're not really in the cloud. And then there's cloud systems that are SaaSes but have a narrower set of support. And we're one of the ones that have support for all three major operating systems, and I think there's been a real need for that. I think there's been a real need for kind of a very performant system, and we've gotten. I think we're very fast. I think that's one of the nice things about being a cloud provider. You get to really focus on that, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback from that standpoint. And then that's kind of the new channel that we've gotten from the open source, from the public projects that are using it. From existing customers, we continue to. It's interesting when I talk to our enterprises and when I talk to our internal engineering system teams here at Microsoft, my internal customers, they're very similar in what they need, right? So an example of that is I demoed a feature to a customer a couple of weeks ago, and the feature is basically, hey, anytime you run a pipeline in this organization, so pretend you're like in the Skype org or the Azure org or, one of those, or you're at Shell, or like pick the company of your choice. And you want to make sure that every single time that any pipeline is run, it scans for credentials to make sure credentials are never part of that, or whatever other policy that you want. And, we have that feature coming now. Because those types of compliance and security features are the types of things that we see organizations really asking for. And I was demoing it, but I built it to an external customer, but I built it for the Azure team, because the Azure team absolutely needs this to make sure that we're meeting all the security and compliance requirements that they need as part of it. So kind of a very broad set of different asks from different customers.
And those great, and you get to bill it internally that way too, so it's terrific. The Azure team gets to pay for it.
There is some interesting dynamics here as part of that, right? Which is the internal teams, like if you're Office, then like they come to me to get the service, and I'm like kind of paying, they're paying me. But then if you're the Azure team, you're coming to pay me, but then I'm paying Azure. Like it's just this weird, makes your head hurt kind of model.
Yeah.
Budget tracking is incredible, I imagine.
Let's talk about. Let's just settle some easy questions. So, what technologies or what languages of code are supported in DevOps?
Absolutely any platform is.
Absolutely any. That's exactly right.
Any, right? Like absolutely any. That's right.
Right.
We have a generic automation system, so it can do anything, and then we have been steadily, building up the out-of-the-box simplicity and capabilities. So as an example, you can go and do anything you want with our hosted images, but it's a little bit simpler for you if they have all the right dependencies on for you for the language and platform and type of application that you're building. So we have this steady stream of feedback that we're getting, like, oh, we're missing this version of this SDK that we add and make it better, right? Like whether it's an AI/ML library that someone needs as part of it. And that just kind of makes it simpler, easier. But you can do anything, and our goal is to make it super easy, a super good and easy experience, no matter what type of platform or developer you are.
Cool. Let's talk about Visual Studio and integration inside Visual Studio. What does a pipeline look like if I am inside Visual Studio? Is it only in the portal?
So the primary experience is in the portal. One of the big things that we are doing is, we've been moving over pipelines from an entirely UI-based model to one that's more driven off of YAML. So if we were to take, how about, why not Roslyn? We were to just go look at one of these guys, and actually, you know what? Let's do something fun. Actually, let's do GitHub Desktop. And we were to go over to this guy. They're using us right now. And if we were to look in, I need to pick one where I've looked at it before and I know where, there we go. Here's a YAML file. So here's one where they've checked in a file in the source code that defines and configures the CI process that they're using. So if you're in Visual Studio, you can just interact and use for this. And in fact, we also have a VS Code plugin that will be shipping soon that gives you kind of language features for this particular grammar to make that easier to author. We also have some simple integration into Visual Studio and VS Code. And that simple integration are things like if you're in a repo and in a particular branch, in the status bar at the bottom, it will show you the status information for the most recent build for that branch.
I got it. Now, wait, I got to ask you this question because it's just eating me up. So I'm in there and I organize and I'm dragging and dropping. I'm building the perfect pipeline and everything is just spectacular. I export it as YAML and now it's in my source control just like I know it's supposed to be. And my developers are tweaking the crap out of it. And I want to put it back in the visualizer, the designer tool. Is there ever going to be the other way to go?
Yes.
YAML.
Yes.
YAML the designer.
Yeah. So yes and no. So the path that we're on right now is we have two different design experiences, right? One experience is the in the web designer experience that you're referring to, and we have an export model, and that does not support import, and it probably won't support import in the future for lots of perfectly good but not extremely satisfying reasons that I won't go into right now. The path that we are on, though, is that the other designer, which is primarily more oriented towards just authoring YAML, is what you're seeing here, which is go author the text file. What we're doing, and this is going to be shipping very, very soon, actually, is building up a rich design experience for the YAML jobs in the web. So, for example, just like in the designer experience, you can go and search for tasks and find one. You're going to be able to do that in the YAML model and then drag that into the file, and it will the template for that YAML. And then I mentioned the language service. So we're using Monaco in the web with a language service, which means that when you're typing out the values and variables and required fields, you'll get all of that authoring help that you would expect in a typed language.
Okay, so you're meeting me kind of a little further than halfway. That's nice.
Yeah.
That's really nice. Because that's the painful part, right? Is you're afraid to export it as YAML because you realize you can't go back, and then you got these little things you want to do, and you know what I mean.
Yep, I totally know what you mean. We hear it regularly, which is why we're trying to make the YAML experience really good to see if that solves the problem for folks in a good enough way.
Very nice, very nice. And then inside Windows, we use this just out the freaking yin-yang, and what's nice about that, I assume, you tell me I think I'm right, that all of our internal customers push all the performance boundaries for us so we can know that this can scale to where all of our customers likely are.
Yeah, we did, using Azure Pipelines, each day we do 500 million tests. Each day we do, just internally at Microsoft.
Yeah.
We do 87,000 deployments. And you hear me pause on that one because the 500 million is a nice round number that it's more than that now. I just haven't updated the next big round number.
Yeah.
But it goes up week by week because when you get into a world where teams have adopted pipelines and have their tests automated, their deployments automated, it turns out what people tend to do is deploy more often. So the number of deployments is going up and up and up. We'll be over 100,000 daily deployments using Azure Pipelines just internally at Microsoft here. If not by the end of the year, I expect in January. So yes, we use it at very high scale.
Very high scale. I don't care so much how many tests are run. I want to know how many tests pass is what I want to know.
Well, that number, I could go find that one out. I'm a little bit worried that number would be a little lower than the 500 million.
Now, this is GA. This is the whole shebang. Everybody could use this anywhere.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right. It's all available now.
Yeah, that's right.
Is there an easy way for people to get into it, to just experiment without racking up any cost?
Yeah, so if you go to azure.com/DevOps, that's, kind of the entry point into all of this, and it'll have links to all the documentation and how to get started. But to use Azure Pipelines, there's two ways to do it for free. One is if you're using it for public projects, like you create a public repo in GitHub, it's just free. I mean, like there technically is a threshold, but you kind of have to be a Bitcoin miner before you're going to get anywhere near it. It's just free. If you want to do it for private projects, then you can run up to one job at a time, up to 1,800 minutes a month for free before you have to pay anything. So it's a pretty big margin to use.
Holy moly! Mm-hmm. And open source, it's 100% free. We could do this for 10.
Yeah. So technically, fine print, it's like up to 10 jobs in parallel for free, unlimited minutes. And if you're an open source project out there and you really, for some reason, need more than 10 at a time, we'll probably be able to help you out.
Just email bgates@microsoft.com.
No, there's follow the contact information at azure.com/DevOps. And we've done this for a few other projects as well. As long as you're a legitimate open source project that has the legitimate need, our intention is to provide free CI for you. Absolutely.
Nice. Any big names using Azure Pipelines on the open source side?
We have, it's funny, mention, the products. Let me show you another part of the product that we're using. I'm going to go to, back to our Azure DevOps, and I'm going to go to a different project, which is one that we're using entirely for tracking. So let me just open up a query here. And basically, this is all of the repos by stars that are in different states of adopting Azure Pipelines. So if we were to go filter this down to the state, so let's just go to in progress or adopted. And, you'll see we have names like Electron, VS Code, Atom, Webpack, Express, TypeScript, Yarn, Next, Parcel, there's a lot.
It's quite a coup, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, that settles it. That settles it right there. Azure DevOps is awesome. If you wondered before, just look at that list. Holy, wet my pants. That's incredible.
Made it available in September.
Wow.
That is impressive. We should do a whole episode around getting template 10 up and running on this.
Yeah, that'd be pretty sweet. I bet it'd be straightforward too.
Yeah.
Jamie, all right, tell me the last thing you want to make sure developers know about Azure DevOps before we end this episode.
I think the major thing is that, if you're an existing customer, this is a pretty exciting time. We've got more energy than ever going into this space, into developer services overall at Microsoft, and, the product, and, we hope your lives are going to get better, because everything we've been doing the last several years, the reason we did the GitHub acquisition is entirely around the same theme, which is we're a developer-oriented customer. Developers are our lifeblood, and we're trying to make the lives of developers better. And, my job is to go do that in the developer services and the DevOps space. And, I think we got a lot to offer right now, and we got a lot more coming. And if you want to give it a try, go to azure.com/DevOps.
Azure.com/DevOps. All right. Last question is going to be this is an insider trading question. Now that we've bought and completed our acquisition of GitHub, do you think the integration will be tighter?
There is a possibility the integration, will be tighter. In fact, I could show you another demo, if you really wanted. But we're doing a bunch more. So we've already had good integration between Azure Pipelines and GitHub.
We're going to stretch this episode by another minute and a half to let you show us that demo. Just give us the quick of it.
Just to give you the quick version of it, right? Okay, we'll do the quick version of it. This is stuff that hasn't shipped yet, but is going to be shipping pretty soon. So as an example, let's say I'm going to go here to our work item, and let me just you're not watching this. I'm just resetting state here. You guys didn't see anything at all. Okay.
All right, now we're back to where
Now we're back, right?
Okay.
So I got my work item here. I'm going to work on, I'm on my Kanban board, start of the day. I want to work on this. Like, let's go make that into the active state, right? I go look in this. There's nothing in the development section. I haven't done anything on this, right?
Right.
Now let's go and I do this work on GitHub. So here's my GitHub repo. And I'm going to go implement this feature by editing the README file. If only they were all that easy.
Add space.
We'd still add a bug.
Put a space.
That's right.
Say hi there, I used to actually be in the .NET Framework team designing APIs. Like those demos were a lot harder to go do. It turns out the code actually had to compile. This fixes AZ number 16. And of course we're on GitHub, so we'll do a branch and we'll create a pull request for it. So now I've done my work, I've gotten it started. And if I go back to here, we will open this and it will be making a liar out of me because I wasn't planning to do this demo.
Looks like we might be editing.
We'll fix all this in post-edit. Keep going.
I think we might, this part has to work for it.
What was the trick? Was it the pound 16?
Let me try it the trick was the pound 16. And let me just try it one more time real quick.
Yeah.
Commenting on the commits, not what I want to do.
Did the bang at the end somehow mess it up?
No, I've done that before. There's another possibility, which is we're changing the syntax. And there's a possibility that they did this to me.
So I was doing a demo on C# 8, and I pulled down a new version of Roslyn, and they changed the syntax of asynchronous for each between me prepping my demo and delivering my demo.
That's exactly what happened here. Here it goes.
So we're
AZ
right.
pound.
Right, 16. So we'll try that. We'll also, just for the fun of it, put in AZ AB.
That's for Azure DevOps.
Boards, Azure boards. Yeah, no, you can make that joke too. That'll be a good one. Let's just see if this this gives me the magic.
Oh. Wonder which one it worked.
Okay, now we're going to debug it one more time.
Easy. Okay. This is awesome.
What did I do? Did I just...
You can't...
I think it went to preview, did it?
No, I commented. I think I commented on the commits instead of...
I had to change.
Yep.
Yeah, you better call it test 2 when you do it. This is the most interesting demo we've had all day.
Oh, it gets really good if this part works. So.
Meanwhile, Chris is sweating over the time.
Yeah, he's like, guys.
He's fallen asleep.
You got to make an actual change. Yeah.
Details.
Here we go. Create pull request. Test quadruple D. Well, now we know what it was. It was AB.
Sure looks like it, doesn't it? Okay.
Damn the developers.
All right. Okay, now I think I know what you were showing me at least. I wonder if that pull request is going to be accepted.
Yeah. Cancel.
Let me do it now. Let me go through real quick now, all right?
All right.
So here I am on the Kanban board. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement this feature number 16 here kind of from end to end with full traceability between GitHub and Azure DevOps. So I'm going to get started, start my day. I'm going to move it over into the active state.
Okay.
I open the work item. There's nothing in the development section, nothing there. It's all empty. I'm going to go over to GitHub, which is where this code actually is. And we're going to implement the feature by editing the README file.
All right.
Only life was always that easy.
We'd still introduce a bug.
This fixes AB number 16. And of course, we're on GitHub, so we will put this into a new branch.
Just guessing, AB stands for Azure Boards.
You got it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. So we'll make a pull request for this because, of course, GitHub. And now if we go back and we open up this issue, we will see we have links automatically between the commit that was made. So if I go to there, I can look to the commit, and there's the actual, awesome change to add a couple of lines. And we can follow this back to the pull request. And back on the pull request, we can see that Azure Pipelines is in the process of validating this change automatically because it's hooked up on this. And if I go in, we can see here's the checks API in GitHub, which is where we publish status information. In fact, we publish not just the status information of build success, but how many tests passed or failed and how much code coverage was done or not. If I follow this, from GitHub over into Azure Pipelines, it'll take us into the actual pipeline where it's in the process of kicking off and doing the build. But from the pipeline itself, we also have the link back to the actual commit on GitHub. So if I were to click this, it would again take me to the commit this was at. Or I could go back over to the pull, back from the pull request. So again, you've got this kind of full traceability end to end. And here's kind of really sexy part of it. If we go get this set up, and here's the problem. This is so fast. I'm gonna just preemptively merge this pull request. So I'm going to confirm this merge. Once I do that, I'm going to go up here, and then I didn't move that. It moved automatically because because the state of the work was done, right? Like the pull request was merged, right? And if I open this guy up, I now have a third commit, a second commit, which is the actual commit into master for the completion of this. So to answer your question, yes, you can expect more integration with GitHub.
Yes, that we can expect more.
That seems pretty integrated to me.
Won't be long till we see this in the real world?
It'll be very soon. It'll be the first version of this will be rolling out in December.
Oh my gosh, That is brilliant. That is brilliant. We knew this sort of stuff was coming. We were just waiting for it. This is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so now when we talk about this in terms of risk, having a tool like Azure DevOps, especially Pipeline, helps us all the way around in a 360-degree way. I mean, really, it does.
Absolutely. That's exactly right.
Yeah, this is one of those things. We say this about a lot of stuff, but if you're not using this, you better have a good reason why you're not using it because it's unbelievable. Jamie, cool, man. Thanks for giving us this extra demo, kind of letting us have a little sneak peek here. This has been a great episode. Thanks for being on the show.
Happy to do it. Lots of fun.
All right.
Thanks a bunch.